Baldur's Gate 3 made me realize a lot of things. I actually learned a couple things playing this, and it is ultimately a game I wasn't an easy mark for, but it's still one I'm going to recommend to a lot of you guys. Yeah, I know, like in a sea of, Jedi Survivor, Diablo 4, Everspace 2, a million billion other big, massive games that'll take you a while. Here's another one. Baldur's Gate 3 is really good. I've been playing a review copy, but we've said this, and you've probably seen this in other reviews. Count this as a review in progress because there's a lot of game here. We didn't get access to the game too early, but there's still a lot I want to highlight because as of right now, it does seem like technically the game is pretty sound. I haven't had too many glitches. I had a little bit of stuttering here and there, just PC stuff I was able to fix. There's also reports of save issues, but I haven't had any of those issues, so I just wanted to put that out front. Also, all the footage you're going to see here is fairly early. I'm not going to spoil anything for you guys. There's a lot of like cool, weird shit that shows up and might surprise you, especially if you're not a Dungeons and Dragons person, which I am not. I am very sorry to admit that. I like a lot of things. You guys, if you've been watching, you know I want to love and just enjoy as much shit as possible, but never got into Dungeons and Dragons. Also never got into Game of Thrones, really. But that's another video. Really, the thing with Baldur's Gate 3 was that I was like, oh, Larian's making it. That's good. They made Divinity Original Sin 2. But the thing with Original Sin 2 was that I never got into it. Not necessarily because I didn't like it or anything, but like, you know, when there's a game that dense or that overwhelming and you're like, I can't do that right now. I'm playing something else, or I need to play Beautiful Joe instead on an emulator. Like, you know, you got to be in the mood for this type of game. And I never just fell in the right mood for Divinity Original Sin 2. I dabbled with it. I poked around. I checked out a friend. Like, it's definitely good. Like, you can tell, I'm like, this is good. This seems like a good game, but just not something I want to play right now. Something I tried to a couple of times and bounced off of. Wrong place, wrong time. Baldur's Gate 3, I guess, just hit at the right time, or maybe it's even better. I don't know, but I've been absolutely hooked on it. I have bags under my eyes because I was playing till like 3 o'clock in the morning and haven't really made a lot of progress in certain instances my last session because the game is incredibly challenging, but not just like Dark Souls challenging or like something weird, but just genuinely there's a lot to it. The combat encounters are rough. They're brutal. You die pretty quickly. The enemy constantly outsmarts you. I've had the enemy be dumb a couple of times and get stuck places, but most of the time, I get my ass beat. And it's really a learning process. It's you exploring the world, really maximizing all of your options because it is turn-based. And I've seen a lot of people go, oh, I would play this if it wasn't turn-based. And that's a shame because I still think turn-based games are good. And I feel like some people, by choosing that, are like missing out on a lot of things. There are games that I didn't want to be in first person, but I played them and still ended up liking them. So that's just me. But even though combat is challenging, like I said, there is a lot you can do. You have to utilize all your abilities, all your party members, and every single buff. You got to help each other out, but it's also situational and positional, but also being able to jump, being able to change verticality, move out of the way, shove enemies off cliffs if you're near them, use environmental hazards. There are a shit ton of tools here. And even when it's at its hardest, you still feel fairly empowered. Like you feel like you still have a lot of tools, and that goes a long way. I found the combat like asks a lot of you, and I hit a wall quite a few times. And we talked about it in the Game Ranks video. Like there's like a little bit of an element to sometimes being a little aimless in the game because you're kind of like, what do I do next? Or like, I can't talk my way through this. I can't do this. I can't convince this person this. I can't win this battle. You got to really kind of like peel things back and really dissect everything. And that's been a satisfying thing for me. Just kind of sitting here, clicking around at this game, pondering it, trying weird things, seeing what works. And that's what I love the most, is that there's like this staggering amount of shit in this game. I don't mean like a massive giant open world filled with side quests. It's not really that. It's more of like a dense, smaller thing with just a million meaningful things to do. A bunch of mini Red Baron quests, basically. But it's really like, other than like dying in combat, aside from that, everything else that really goes on in the game in a lot of instances is like, just you can keep screwing up or making weird choices or experimenting and just seeing where the game goes. There's a lot of things that I was like, oh, if I select this dialogue thing, the game is not going to possibly change or keep going after this, is it? And a lot of the times it does. And that's been the most fun thing for me. The RPG elements, cool, getting loot, leveling up my character, fine. The character building stuff is decent. It gets better the further you get into it. But it's really just kind of the excitement of seeing what the game throws at you next and what you throw back at it, and then see what it throws back once more. Does that make sense? I've romanced characters I never thought I would have. I had a guy try and poke out my eyeball. I've mind controlled people. I've stolen. I've pickpocketed. I've tricked. So that's the other thing that I'm beginning to realize here. As someone who isn't into Dungeons and Dragons, I was able to, there's some shit in this game. I'm like, what is this? But a lot of it does a good job of getting you up to speed, kind of carrying you along. There is a story through line that you can follow. So I didn't have a problem. And no, it's not the type of thing where you need to play 1 and 2 because this takes place hundreds of years later. So it doesn't matter. It's just the Dungeons and Dragons fantasy world. But going back, what I said is that I found that this is definitely going to be a thing for people who want to kind of have their Dungeons and Dragons character in a game and do their thing and really role play. Now, this isn't the first game to do this by any means, but it just feels cool here. It feels a little different. It feels a little distinct. I've had a lot of fun making my character. I went for a rogue who kind of has a little bit of a performance background. I kind of went for Dandelion from The Witcher mixed with Garrett from Thief. So I'm a little debonair, I'm a little dashing, but I'm also a little sickly looking and creepy at the same time and sneaky. So I've been able to talk my way through a lot of things and trick characters and put on a big show and pretend and lie. And I really have been enjoying that. It also helps that the combat has been kicking my ass. So I love avoiding combat, but it's compelling enough. It doesn't feel like when you avoid combat a lot of the time in this game, it doesn't feel like you just skipped a whole section by any means. There's usually always something else that unfolds that'll make it interesting. And that's the beauty of this. It's fucking staggering how much is going on here. Pacing wise, it does have the thing where it's okay, what I was supposed to be doing this, but then I had to go do this and help someone to get there. But then that person needed me to help somebody else. And then I got caught up in this political machination and I got to choose it. It loses the thread once in a while where you're what am I supposed to even be doing again? And I hate the journal. I don't like the way it keeps track of things. It's not that great, but it still does a really good job of just always kind of keeping your brain engaged, I've never felt like I needed to grind. I'm never just kind of wandering around going, what do I do? When I am wandering around going, what do I do? I just keep stumbling upon things. So it doesn't really matter. Again, it's what I've said before, and I said it in the Before You Buy on Game Ranks, dense is the word. But really for me, the biggest thing was just seeing what my rogue actor, weird guy could get into. His name is Drac. He's a fancy pants boy, like I said. It's funny, though, because even though I'm enjoying him and creating his character, I really want to go back and just play completely as one of the main origin characters, because they're all really compelling. And what I think they really nail with this is performances. Performances, voice acting, and character facial animation stuff. They went hard on this. The production values are nuts. These types of games, if you're playing a game for a million hours and you're watching dialogue and side quests, you feel like the characters are just talking and they're in this endless loop of just doing this small kind of canned animation that kind of goes with their saying, but not really, and you kind of get sick of it after a while. This game, I feel, does a really good job of having the characters actually somewhat emote and act out what they're saying as they're talking, even in small moments. Maybe it's canned stuff still, I don't know how they do it, but it still manages to grip me. That, the voice acting, which has been really damn good and earnest a lot of the times with some of these characters, and the facial expressions and specifically eye contact they make. There are points in the game where I'm talking to a random NPC I'm never going to see again, or I'm talking to one of my companions. I could be talking to my least favorite companion, and their performance, their face, the writing, everything, I'm still sitting there going and watching and waiting to see what they do next. And I guess I'm jaded now. I've played a lot of games and I've played a lot of RPGs, and half the time now I'm ugh. But this game has had me gripped and not mashing to skip dialogue or just reading it and skipping it. I want to see the lines performed. I want to be in this world. If it sounds like I'm kind of gushing about it, I am. I don't know if the story is going to come together at the end because I haven't seen it to the very end, but I like the journey. I like the moment to moment stuff. Again, it's keeping me engaged, keeping my brain engaged, it's keeping me challenged. And I've also been playing a lot on Steam Deck, which has been good. This is definitely a game that, I think Divinity as well, which I can't believe they ported that to Switch. It's a game because it's so dense and there's so much to it. It's good to have on the go or play on the couch and be present with your loved ones, at least kind of. That has been a thing for me, definitely. The controller controls I don't love, but it is what it is. You can walk around a little bit more as a regular character, but I like a mouse and keyboard for these types of games. But still, this has been pretty good. I'm actually surprised how playable it is. I mean, granted, he's screaming right now, but still. And in terms of like the video stuff, I have it at 40. The frame rate is fairly decent, and the only thing I really changed was FSR. I switched it to quality because balance was like way too blurry, and that pretty much fixed it. Also, thanks for the tip, Jimmy. But yeah, that did it. So I've really been enjoying playing on this. Now, I can't report about the ROG Ally or anything like that. I've seen a lot of you freaks in the comments and on social media asking me about that. One handheld is good enough for me. Money don't grow on trees. But anyway, this episode is sponsored by... No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. Yeah, ROG Ally, I don't know, but Steam Deck, pretty good. He's getting very hot right now, but yeah, I've spent a good like 2 hours, 3 hours on the deck so far, and it's been pretty good. But in terms of playing it on a real thing, the graphics are really good. Again, I said that with the character performances and stuff like that, but the environments, everything, yeah, again, some pop-ins, some weird things here and there, but ultimately a surprisingly good looking game. For me, that doesn't matter too much though. What matters is the music, and the music is really good. But the biggest thing for me is the wandering around music, the town music, the city music, the forest music, the mountainous region music, the goblin lair music, all that music that's just going to kind of repeat forever and you're going to hear endlessly is just good. Some of it actually reminds me a little bit of Fable in certain instances, but like it's just fantasy stuff, but it's really good here. So for me, I've just been enjoying picking away at this cool world, learning more about Dungeons and Dragons, kind of getting into this world as a gateway drug. There's cool Hellboy looking dudes. There's scary thieves and scoundrels. There's evil goblins and orcs and castles and haunted ghosts and otherworldly spectral people on ships, and mind flayers are cool as hell, squid men. The game is like really horny and perverted sometimes. It's really funny. It's gross. It's grim. It's gory. It's got a lot. And it helps me kind of get the D&D thing. Like I said earlier, like actually having your character out there and like in this game, like the character you would play tabletop with your friends. But it's like it's the whole presentation thing. It's like the narrator, the voiceover that'll describe that. Like you see a chasm. Do you do that? Like you get a lot of that. And the narrator sounds like Galadriel, and that's cool. But it's like trusting the roll of the dice. And even when you fuck up and your dice roll doesn't hit, you just go along with what happens because it's an adventure, and the game just kind of will just keep throwing stuff at you because they've accounted for so many things. How they do that, I don't know. Is it going to fall apart at some point in the game? I don't know. I haven't really seen any seams or cracks in it, but I am starting to feel the magic of that thing, and I can understand why that probably would be fun with a tabletop, with a dungeon master, with people with you. Like I'm getting it, and it's a big thing for a lot of people. Shout out to the gentleman I met at Best Buy the other day. I'm not going to say your name, I'd like to keep you private, but I spoke to somebody at Best Buy the other day, just talking about how they were excited about BG3 and how they were going to play it with their dad because their dad was a Dungeons and Dragons type person and an early Baldur's Gate person from the late 90s with the first game, and then now they're going to get into this together. And that's the other big thing. The fact that you can play this with other people, multiple other people, just seems technically astounding to me. I don't know a lot about, making games, but the little I do know seems like it's just really impressive. So again, hearing from people excited to play this, excited to have their character kind of live those Dungeons and Dragons moments, but also just get wrapped up in a good story, just seems cool. Trusting the roll of the dice, going along with that stuff. I'm starting to get it now. I've learned kind of more what Dungeons and Dragons kind of is. As someone who kind of not thumbed my nose at it, but just never really got into it, am starting to understand, and maybe I'll hop in a session with somebody because Lord knows Dungeons and Dragons people will always ask you. But that's where I'm at about right now with Dungeons and Dragons. Like I said, I spent a lot of time in this, but I want to spend a lot more time in this despite other games coming out. So I'm going to be doing that. If I have more developments, more things to talk about, or even like spoiler talk after the game, I don't know. We'll talk maybe, but who knows how much time I'm going to spend in this game because I already know I want to roll more characters. So I do want to know what you guys are thinking because I've had it for a couple of days, but as of right now, you guys are just getting your hands on it. So how are you feeling so far? If this was something that you played at early access, which I had some experience with, how are you feeling? How are you liking it differently? I think that's one thing I do want to highlight, though. I kind of said this in the before you buy, but like the result of so much community feedback and quality control really shows here. Like when I learned and looked up and heard about things that were, sort of thought up by the community, like character tweaks, quality of life things, the key ring, like just how inventory, like and how stuff takes up your inventory, just lots of clever little things I really appreciate as much as the big things. But again, if you were one of those people providing feedback, or if you just got excited from reviews and you're jumping in now, let's talk Baldur's Gate 3. I want to hear from you guys. I never thought I'd be talking about a Baldur's Gate game. Like I played Dark Alliance back in the day and I was like, this is cool, but I never thought I'd be in. So maybe you're like me, maybe you're not. Let's talk about this stuff. Hit me up down in the comments. Of course, you can always find me also on Twitter, Instagram, and even Threads. I'm trying Threads, but I don't know what the deal is with that. That'll all be linked in the description down below. And big thanks to people who have my back on Patreon and YouTube memberships. Cheers to you. But also thank you to all of you guys. If you've stuck around and listened to me talk about something I love for this long, I appreciate you. Clicking the like button's all you got to do. It helps me. But that's it. Have a great day. I'm Jake Baldino. See you guys next time. Pizza's on me. Subscribe because video games.